Hello. Welcome to our Wafer Paper Friday. My name is Chef Anna. I'm an owner of Floria Cakes, wedding cake designer, and wafer paper instructor, teacher. I teach cake decorators how to make beautiful modern cake designs using wafer paper. If you're watching a replay, welcome. Leave me a comment. And if you're joining us live, leave me a comment where you're watching from. So hello. Today we are going to work with wafer paper, obviously because it's Wafer Paper Friday and that's the reason we are all here. Hello. It's our week 5 and we're going to meet for another week next week for another episode of Wafer Paper Friday, and then we'll see how it goes because I'm excited. I love being here and I love teaching you. Dublin, Argentina, welcome. I live in South Carolina. It is relatively warm outside, but it's still very grumpy and dark. It's very dark. And yeah, let me know if you can hear me because I saw a comment that you cannot hear me. Hello from Zimbabwe. Watching from New York. Hello, New York. What is the weather over there? Hi, Houston, Texas. Hello, Paris. Paris. Hello, Dallas, Texas. So, okay. Panama. Wow, London. So we have our international team. Today I wanted to show you how to make wafer paper feathers and specifically how to attach your wafer paper to a wire. I have a piece already prepared. That's what we are going to use today. But basically, the way you attach wafer paper to wires and make wafer paper feathers, that's what we are going to talk about today. Because now it's like Valentine's Day is the next week, and angels, feathers, sleighs, that's why it's on my mind. For the Valentine's Day, you might want to make a feather to put on your dessert or to add to your cakes, make it a little bit more festive. So, welcome to our conversation. If you wanted to have a template after this live demonstration is done, comment feather and I will send you the template for my feathers. But basically, the first thing we need to do is we need to talk about wafer paper. You know it's coming. To make any decorations, to make, for example, like today we are going to make feathers, you can use any single thickness wafer paper. If you wanted to make your feather a little bit flatter or like with more structure, you might use a different type or different thickness of wafer paper. So for me, I'm going to use 0.27 millimeters wafer paper or 80 grade, but any scraps, usually for something like this, I have a lot of scraps on my table. And if I need to make feathers or if I need to make like little flowers, I usually reuse my scraps like that. I was teaching a class on wafer paper anemones, those ones, so I have a little piece of wafer paper here and that's what I'm going to use. So let me see if I can move you down so you can see my table as well. I'm trying a little bit different setup, so bear with me. Bear with me as I'm struggling with making sure that you're going to see everything. And I got a new desk and it's a little bit shorter and doesn't work as well as the other one. So you should be able to see me here. So hello. And for our feathers, you can use a template, you can use just like freehand your feathers, depends on the size of the cake you wanted to use and depends on the style of feathers you wanted to make. But basically, I'm going to start with my wire. And let's talk about wires for a second. For wafer paper, you can use the same wire you can use for your sugar flowers, foliage, any decoration you make. Just make sure that your wire is cloth covered or paper covered. I have different brands, depends on the size, but if you're just starting out and you don't know what to buy, I would suggest you to buy 22 gauge and 26. So 22 will work for your stems, for your larger, heavier flowers, and you can use 22 gauge wire for your feathers as well. If you wanted to make something like David Austin rolls, something like heavier flowers, you might go down to 20 gauge wire. And 26 gauge wire will work for, do I have 26? Let me grab some. So 26 gauge wire is way thinner compared to 20 gauge wire. So this is 26 and this is 20. You can see that 20 gauge wire is way thicker than the 26. So 20 or 22 we use for stems and heavier flowers, and 26 we use for foliage. We use 26 gauge wire for making petals, but this might be a little bit too thin if you wanted to make it a larger feather. If you wanted to make a smaller feather, maybe like 2 inches or 5 centimeters, 26 gauge wire will work beautifully as well. So I have 3 layers of wafer paper. Basically, I'm going to separate them because I need 3 pieces of wafer paper. For a feather or any textural decoration, something with a little bit more dimension, you can use different number of wafer paper sheets. I prefer, like for feather, I find that 3 works the best. And all I'm going to do is to wire my wafer paper first. And to add wire to my wafer paper, I have a piece of 20 gauge wire. It's white because I'm making white feathers, so I prefer my wire not to be as obvious as if I would use green wire. So for my wafer paper and my wire, I'm going to attach them using wafer paper glue. And this is my favorite way to attach wires to wafer paper, to assemble wafer paper flowers, to do any decorations, and it's so easy to make. So what I do is I usually collect my scraps of wafer paper, all of them, all the time, because wafer paper is edible and you can store it in a bag for a long period of time, all your scraps. And occasionally when I have a whole bag of wafer paper scraps, I put it in a food processor or a coffee grinder and I grind into a powder like this. So this is basically just grounded up wafer paper, and I use it for a lot of different things. First of all, I keep it on my table and I make wafer paper glue. I just take a little bit of wafer paper snow and mix it with water, mix it up and put it in the microwave. I find that the easiest way or the fastest way to make wafer paper glue is to put it in the microwave, because we need to melt our wafer paper and create this not very pleasant looking consistency, but this is an edible glue which will stay flexible and see-through and won't be very obvious on your wafer paper, because it's basically just melted wafer paper. And if you wanted to make it in advance, you can keep it in the fridge for maybe up to a week, but I find that the texture changes, so I just make a fresh batch new every single time, and then I just drop it into my dishwasher, so I always have a clean jar with a clean little spoon to mix it up in the microwave. Also making this wafer paper snow, I don't know how to call it. I call it flakes or wafer paper snow. You can use it, you can mix with a little bit of pearl color and apply to your cake. You can apply on a piping gel and create like this texture, resembles velvet or snow, especially around holidays. I know we are in February, but generally that's how I make my snow for gingerbread houses and for winter cakes. I just mix this with a pearlescent color, shake it and just sprinkle around. Also, you can mix it with powder color, any powder color, either petal dust or just dry powder colors, and then sprinkle and use it as a velvet and apply to a cake on piping gel. Piping gel is just like my preferred way to attach heavier decorations to cakes. Doesn't matter if you're working with fondant or ganache cakes, you can do that. And making wafer paper snow, and also sometimes I use this mixture to make my wafer paper lace. You know that I put it in a blender, I make a wafer paper smoothie, and then I just like put it on a pan to dry it out. So today we are making wafer paper feathers, and I have 3 different layers of wafer paper. I'm going to bend my wire. This is 20 gauge wire, but it doesn't matter. You can use either 20, 22, something depends on the size of your feathers. I wanted to make it a relatively large feather, so I'm going to bend it a little bit on an angle. And then I'm going to apply my wafer paper glue onto my wire first, because I wanted to attach my wafer paper to my wire on both sides. And we're making 3 layers today. We're using 3 layers of wafer paper, so I'm just gently applying small amount of wafer paper glue onto my wire. And I'm going to place it onto my wafer paper like that, and maybe apply a little bit more wafer paper glue to the sides to make sure that my wire will stay in place. Then I will take another piece of wafer paper, and usually I alternate, so one way I go shiny side up, the other way, the other layer go the bumpy side up, because I find that wafer paper curls differently, depends on the size you're using. So usually, in my experience, the shiny side curls towards you, so usually I want my outer layers to be a shiny side. So I'll take another pass of wafer paper glue, small amount, and I'm applying just on my wire because I wanted to add another layer of wafer paper onto my wire like that. And again, I'm placing my shiny side up, so I will have 2 shiny sides on both outer layers. And I'm using wafer paper glue, and I'm using just a little bit of pressure to sandwich that together. So now I have my wire sandwiched in between 3 layers of wafer paper, and you can use template, or you can cut it like freehand. And then I'm going to cut my feather. So to cut my feather, I'm going to freehand it, because this is usually how I do that when I have a piece of wafer paper and I wanted to make feather. I just go and by the size or the shape of the wafer paper. So I'm just cutting a general feather shape on one side, trying to keep my wire in the middle and give it a little bit more interest like that. And I'm cutting through all 3 layers at the same time to save me a little bit of time. And now what I'm going to do is to use a pair of scissors and just cut my wafer paper, give it a little bit more dimension. So I'm removing little pieces like that, because I don't want my feather to be too flat. And then we are going to shape it even more. But something like this first will help me to give it a better shape. And to shape my wafer paper, I'm going to use a steamer. You can use a cold steam, you know, my little fancy mini steamer that I use all the time. But I'm going to use a hot steamer, and I'll show you how to do that first. So let's take a feather and a pair of scissors. I have 2 pairs of scissors. I either use the scrap ones, these are scrapbooking scissors, steam holes, and these are sewing scissors. This is like for people who sew. I always like trying to be careful and not to poke my eyes out with my scissors. So these are 2 pairs of scissors I use all the time for wafer paper. I prefer to use craft scissors, so scrapbooking scissors, because they work better. They're meant to cut paper, so obviously wafer paper works for them. And I'm going to use a smaller pair of scissors just to cut through all 3 layers of my wafer paper, leaving about maybe, I would say, 7mm, quarter of an inch to the base of the feather, and giving it a little bit something to hold on. And because I cut those slits first, now I have different directions for my feather. And I wanted this to be dimensional, I wanted this to be fun and quirky, so I'm going to cut it in all the different directions, especially here at the bottom. I'm trying to not to cut to my wire, but still cut it through and give it different directions like that. And my feather parts or little things, about 2mm thickness, Depends on your preferences and depends on how much time you have. It's still going to look amazing, but the thinner you go, the more realistic your feather is going to look like. So almost there. And if you have time at this stage, I would rather leave this feather to dry before shaping that and going to the next stage. But it should be fine if we just gave it like 5 minutes to dry, because wafer paper glue dries relatively quickly, but it depends on your humidity. My room, I think my studio is, no, it's 39% humidity, so it's still not very humid, but it's not drying very fast. So now I almost cut through all of my layers for my feather, and all I need to do is to steam my feather to be able to shape it. Let's see, let's go this way. And I have a cloth steamer here on my table, like that. Sometimes I just need to wait for that to heat up. Sometimes I prefer to use a smaller steamer, like my mini steamer, but for something like a feather this size, I find that either using a pot of boiling water or using a steamer like this will work a little bit faster, especially if you need to make a lot of feathers for your cake, if you're making Valentine's Day decorations and you wanted to make your feathers. So I'll start with gently steaming my wafer paper on both sides. So you can hear my steamer boiling. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see that my feather is starting to open up gently with the steam, like that. So I'm just placing my wafer paper into the steam first to help it to soften at the beginning. And then you can use either a toothpick or you can use something like a Dresden tool to help it to move in different directions. So I'm separating my layers of wafer paper, and remember we cut 3 different layers, so now I need to give them a little bit more shape. So a little bit of steam application, a toothpick to help it separate and curl different directions, like that. And you can see it doesn't take long. Like, these feathers become so fluffy in a matter of minutes. And if it becomes too fluffy or like too soft and you're worrying about your wafer paper melting, just take it out of your steamer and let it dry for a little bit. Like, okay, now I steamed my wafer paper for maybe a few minutes. I'm going to run my toothpick in between of all of those layers to help them separate a little bit more, because we cut them all together, so they got stuck all together. Now I wanted to give them more dimension on one side, so you can see I have my feather fluffy and beautiful on one side. And what I do is I take my toothpick, and you can see I place that in between 2 layers first, and then I'll do the same for my top layers. I just wanted to give them a little bit more movement before steaming them again. So I'm just playing with my wafer paper feather, and then I'll pinch at the bottom to bring these layers together, and on the other side is the same to make it open and make it fluffy. So I'm relatively happy with my feather. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of bend different directions. And now you have it. If you wanted to steam it a little bit more, just be careful where you place your steamer, like how you guide your steamer, and then you can use it for all your decorations. So let me know if you have any questions about working with wafer paper or making wafer paper feathers, wafer paper decorations, and let me know if you can hear me, because I saw a comment that you cannot hear me. Maybe I've been doing that without the volume. And now if you wanted to place them on a cake, for example, you wanted to attach your feathers to a cake, okay, let me know if you can or cannot hear me, because I saw 2 comments you cannot hear me. So 3 layers I use, yeah, okay, so if you cannot hear me, come back, should be fine. And I use 3 layers of wafer paper, and thank you for letting me know, because I was worried about that. 3 layers of wafer paper, I glued them together with wafer paper glue, and then you can see like here 3 layers of wafer paper, like that. There are three different layers, and then I cut them all together into different shapes and used my cloth steamer to open them up to make them so fluffy and beautiful. And you can use my template. I have a template on my website, so if you're watching a replay or you're watching a little bit after that live demonstration, you can come and feather on a replay or send me a message, and I will send you this template for feathers if you wanted to have some guidance, because we cut them in different directions. But you can make these feathers very quickly. I think it takes like 5 minutes to make every single one if you're not talking as much as I do. And then you can play with them. You can actually steam them a little bit more. Let's see what is going to happen if we'll steam them a little bit more, because they curl, like wafer paper curls, especially if you use them towards your shiny side. You can curl them even more towards you or make it open and all fluffy. So you can reshape your wafer paper feathers very easily, applying a little bit of moisture and guiding your wafer paper with a toothpick and creating these beautiful decorations. Same would work if you wanted to make like pages for a book or decorations for your Valentine's cake. Valentine's Day is coming, and I know that you have a lot of orders for Valentine's Day, so making a feather like that. If you don't want to put it on the wire, you can stick just 3 layers of wafer paper all together with a little bit of wafer paper glue, and then cut them and shape them the same way, and then you will have a beautiful edible wafer paper feather with no wire. You don't need to put it on a wire, just make sure that to place a little bit of wafer paper glue to stick them together. Thank you. Thank you. You can hear me, you can see me perfect. How to color them? If you wanted to color your wafer paper feathers, I would suggest you to color your wafer paper. It depends on the shade. So if you wanted to make them, for example, like light pink or maybe blue, maybe you're making like an angel with wings, I would use the petal dust. I would use a dry petal dust and dry dust my wafer paper, and then cut, glue, and shape and steam them before, coloring before attaching and assembling, because it will be very hard for you to color your wafer paper feathers when they are already shaped. If you wanted to make it like a darker color, maybe navy or dark green, even though I don't know why we wanted to make dark green feathers, but who knows. I would suggest you to airbrush wafer paper first, let it dry, and then shape it, cut it, and do all the other things. I think I have a piece of airbrushed wafer paper. Yeah, I do have. So you can airbrush your wafer paper first and then cut it and assemble into different types of feathers and different thickness. If you wanted to make them like gold color or any metallic colors, I would color them first as well, maybe with petal dust or color mixed with a little bit of vodka or even oil, because for wafer paper I prefer to mix my dry color, like dry dust, gold or silver, with vegetable oil, because then wafer paper stays flexible and it's not being destroyed compared to using alcohol on wafer paper. And then cut, shape, and do all the other things as well. You can use dry dust on your wafer paper feathers, but they are so fragile after they've been shaped, so it will be very hard for you to color them after shaping. You might try to airbrush them, but I would suggest to color your wafer paper before making any designs out of wafer paper in terms of making feather. So for the wires, if you never worked with floral wires, unfortunately you cannot buy them in the craft store. Like the wire you can buy at the craft store, they are not suitable for making flowers, not sugar flowers, not wafer paper flowers, because the wires you can buy at the craft store, it's not cloth covered or paper covered. So it's not going to attach to sugar paste, it's not going to attach itself to wafer paper. And what you need to do, I'm looking at my wires, let me grab all my wires. And what you need to do is you need to find, these are like regular craft store wires. You can see it doesn't have any cover, it's just plain wires. But you need to have either cloth covered or paper covered wires, and there are different brands that make these wires. So for stamps, for our stamps for flowers and for feathers, you can use 20 gauge wire or 22 gauge wire. I have both, like 20 or 22 for stamps. And for your leaves and for your foliage, for your petals, if you wanted to attach them, I would suggest you to buy 26 or maybe 28. But basically, if you're just starting out, two types of wires, you just need two. You need 22 and 26. So 22 will work for your stems and 26 will work for your leaves and for your petals if you wanted to tape them, to wire them together. There are different brands, but make sure that you're buying food safe or suitable for consumption. This is New York NU cakes, cake wires. I love them. PME, I love them. CK products, I love them. So these are, and I think the other brand is Sunrise wires or something like this. But basically either or these three brands I tried and I like them and I use them all the time. So 22 for your stems, 20 or 22 for your stems, and 26 or 28 for your leaves. I would suggest you to buy white wires because then you can color your wafer paper and it's not going to be very obvious, especially for your petals. But they come in two different colors. Most floral wires come in white and green. If you have the budget or desire to spend a lot of money on tools, buy both sizes in white and green, because sometimes especially for leaves, green wire might be a little bit more beneficial. But because we are not working with sugar paste, we're working with wafer paper, wires are not as visible as sugar paste. I do have every single color in every single size because I'm working with wafer paper and sugar paste and I make a lot of flowers. So for me, I find it's beneficial to have different types, but basically I only use 20 or 22 for my stems and 26 or 28 for my leaves or petals. For something like for anemone, I use 20 for anemone for the flower for the stem and 26 for my foliage. So yes, make sure it's cloth covered, make sure it's food safe or suitable for placing on your cakes, and either 20, 22 and 26 or 28 for your leaves and foliage. When you're going to attach your flowers, feathers, we're talking about feathers today, to a cake, make sure that you're never inserting your wire into a cake. We're not allowed to do that. It's not food safe. We don't want it to cross-contaminate any cakes, nothing like that. So when you're going to insert your cakes into your insert your feathers, your wires into your cake, make sure that you're protecting your wire. If you're using just one feather or one flower like that, I prefer to use drinking like little straws. These are coffee stirrers, so these are that you use to mix your coffee, and you can find them everywhere on Amazon. So for a single feather like that, but you can see when I'm inserting my feather, my tube is not holding onto my feather. For that, I need a little bit of floral tape, and I'm like a magician today. I have everything prepared. I'm teaching another class for these anemones on Monday, and it will be on Facebook Live on Searchina's page. So I have everything prepared for the class. So for floral tape, we stretch our floral tape first to make sure it's activated, and we tape our feathers or flower, doesn't matter. We just need to add a little bit of thickness to our stem to make sure it's not going to fall out of our coffee stirrer. And usually if you have more than just one flower or one feather, you can tape them together and they will stay in place. So I'm making sure to add a little bit more thickness to my stem, and then I can insert that into my coffee stirrer, and it's going to stay in place very firmly. So now it's not falling out. And when I'm going to insert my feather into a cake, I will cut it at an angle like this. And now my wire is protected and food safe. So my wire is not going to touch my cake, and this stays very firmly together. I think I dismantled my feather from my wire. So this is the way to attach your feathers to your cake if you wanted to insert any wires. I saw a question if you can put them in the fridge. Yes, you can put wafer paper feathers in the fridge. Can we keep these feathers inside the fridge after setting on the cake? Yes, and it has nothing to do with wafer paper, but it has a lot to do with you and things you keep in the fridge. So the general idea the condensation happens not because of the fridge or your wafer paper or something like that. The condensation happens when the rapid change of temperature happens. So for example, your fridge is very dry and it stays at like I don't know, 10% humidity, and it's very cold. Your room is not so dry, maybe 70% humidity, and it's way warmer. So when you take a dry cake out of the fridge and put it on your table, the condensation happens. So the condensation will make your buttercream sweat, will create droplets, or your sugar melt on your fondant, will affect your sugar flowers, it will affect your wafer paper flowers. So it has nothing to do with wafer paper, but the condensation, the difference in humidity and temperature between your fridge and your room. You need to make sure that the humidity is similar in your room and in your fridge, so the condensation won't happen, or it will not happen that rapidly. To do that, make sure that you know your humidity. I obviously have my humidity checker and I keep it in my fridge if I need to put a cake in the fridge. And when I place my cakes, doesn't matter, sugar flowers, wafer paper flowers, fondant, in the fridge, I never keep any fresh produce in my fridge. So no fruits, no vegetables. I'm very mindful about the amount of open packages with dairy, like cheeses, cottage cheese, something like that. This anything that exudes moisture, I'm trying to be very mindful. So I take everything out of my fridge as much as I can to make sure that there is nothing that produces moisture inside my fridge. But like fruits, vegetables, especially herbs and salad mixes, they like create moisture like there is no tomorrow. So I'm taking this out of my fridge temporarily when I'm placing my cake in the fridge. Then if you cannot do that for any reason, or you live in a very high humidity, put your cake in a cardboard box before placing in the fridge. So I have a few cardboard boxes that I used with my cakes that fits inside my fridge. I'm a cottage food law baker, so I bake out of my house and I use my fridge to place cakes. So these are the things that work for me. Same with commercial fridges. Commercial fridges are very humid, and there's like another conversation if you wanted to talk about that. But basically I place my cake inside a cardboard box and then I put it in the fridge. When I take it out of the fridge, I put it on my table inside the cardboard box. So when condensation happens, the condensation happens on the cardboard box on the outside and gets absorbed by the cardboard and not my cake. So you can safely put wafer paper, sugar on the cream cakes, on buttercream cakes, fondant, ganache cakes, put it in the fridge, out of the fridge. You just need to understand the technical side besides it. So it's not just wafer paper, it's your fridge. That's the problem. It's not me, it's your fridge. And Hannah, how does wafer paper lower weight as much as sugar-based flour? Not sure that I understood your question, but if you're asking if wafer paper weighs less than sugar flours, 100%. This feather maybe weighs like 10 grams, 15 grams, so half an ounce. I think even less. It weighs nothing. Same for wafer paper flours. I think that the whole arrangement, like something like this, the whole arrangement size like this weighs about 300 grams. So it's 8 ounces like that, compared to sugar paste, because if you're going to make that in sugar paste, it will weigh 2 pounds or something. So wafer paper flowers are very lightweight, and it's the beauty of working with wafer paper, and it is one of the reasons why I started working with wafer paper, because I make my cakes myself and I deliver my cakes. For the most part, I deliver them myself, and making wedding cakes with a lot of flowers, like I have large arrangements on the cakes right there. It's just so heavy on my back, so I started making wafer paper flowers to make it lighter and be able to carry my cakes around. I would love to make a reservation. I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about. And okay, so any other questions? Any other questions? If not, hello from Brazil. Hello from Brazil. Okay, so we made wafer paper feathers today. I'll do my best to save this live conversation. And if you wanted to have my template after this live demo is done, or if you're watching a replay, comment feathers and I will send you the template for my wafer paper feathers. So you can make them for your Valentine's Day decorations, maybe little angels with little feathers, and you can have fun too. Thank you so much for joining me today. Next week we are going to make flowers. I think we're going to make flowers. We'll see. We'll see how my week is going to unfold, because I'm working on a cake. And I share a lot on my stories. I share almost every single day. I share my processes when I'm working on different cakes, and I'm looking at the cake that's here sitting on the side. When this live demonstration is done, I cannot do that, like comment when it's done, and then I'll send you a template. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for commenting, for supporting me, and follow me on my stories and see what I'm working on. See you next Friday for another Wafer Paper Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be here. Thank you so much. Bye.